I barely get students to come to class, and on a Saturday morning, everybody shows up for TEDx. That's amazing. Just really quickly, I want to thank the students for making this possible. We're so very proud of them. If you'd join me just in thanking the TEDx crew for everything they've done. So I'm a little bit ambitious today in what I want to talk about. I want to talk to you about what it makes a human being, what it makes us actually be human, and how can we be better at it. In 2006, we had the 33-day war. If you remember it, we had a lot of kids that were separated from their families and a lot of people that lost their families at that time. I was one of the social activists who actually went down on the streets in Hamra, and we adopted 50 kids who had lost their parents at that point. And we put them in Masrah al-Madina, and we worked with them every day on drama therapy, on ways of coping. We dealt with these 50 kids on a way of finding life in the middle of war. This is what I want to talk about, is one specific case in them. A little girl, I'm going to call Zena, to protect her name. She was 4 years and a half, something I found out later on. When I first met her on the second day, they told me that she doesn't speak. And if you ask her a question, she'll cry. And if you insist, she'll run away, have an anger tantrum, and sit in the corner. So I looked at her, I smiled, I looked at everybody else in the room, and in front of her I told them, no one speaks to her. No one talks to her, no one asks her a question, you leave her alone. She just stays with me. She smiled. For the next 15 days, I had this little angel that was silently standing this tall and just holding my pants leg. She was stuck to me like glue. From 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day, she would be stuck to me and she wouldn't speak. I'll get back and I'll explain why and what happened and the rest of her story. But what I want to talk to you about is exactly that. The trauma that happened to her shook what it meant to be a human being. It completely destabilized what it meant to be alive or to be a human for her. That's what we want to talk about, what it means to be human. For that to be taken away, or for that to be increased, what does it mean to actually be a human being? We used to, for the longest period of time, say language is what makes us. We're very arrogant as a species. Language is what makes us unique. We're the only ones with complex language. Then we discovered dolphins and higher primates have a complex language. They even are capable of learning our language. You can look her up on YouTube. Coco the gorilla, passed away like 4 years ago, is one of the most famous examples of these primates. Coco the gorilla learned 2,000 words in English and 1,000 signs and could use them completely, not parakeet, repeat them to you, but could use the words. She even learned sign language completely. And you can see her being interviewed by most of the Hollywood celebrities and most of the people around the world, and they speak to her in sign language and she replies. She even actually, like what you guys would be doing right now, online dating. They would show her other gorillas in other zoos, and she would tell them, no, he's not attractive, or he's interesting, I like him. She actually picked her mate. Picking your mate is something we don't get to do in Lebanon sometimes if our families have to interfere with it. So it's a miracle that the gorilla got to have a bit more rights than we did sometimes. So it's not language that makes us unique. Science said tools. We're the only ones that build tools and use tools. Not true. Every day we discover another species that use tools. From simple things like parakeets that use a little wooden twig to actually bring food closer to their cage. They also use the twig, actually, if you watch them, gray parrots will use the stick to pick the lock. They can actually pick the lock on the cage for most cages. Frogs have been known to use certain leaves as umbrellas sometimes. Orangutans actually collect a specific tree leaf they found in the jungle because it actually makes a sound like a horn. So they use it as a trumpet. They developed not only a tool, but they developed a tool for communication. Our version of the speakers that we put everywhere. These are animals. Otters have this adorable habit, if you've seen them, they put a rock on their chest, they float upside down on the water, they grab shellfish, they put it, and then they have a small rock in their other hand. And basically it works like a plate and a cracking tool. And they crack the shells, eat them, and throw them. It's sort of like the lazy version. They swim on their back and they eat. It's like when we watch TV and have our food next to us for all of our junk food needs. We're finding more and more that most of these animals are the same. Maybe the most kind of, if you look at the videos of it, chimps. Chimps have found that if they collect long sticks and sharpen them, they can use them to spear fish. And you can see videos of chimps looking exactly like spearfishing fishermen. So it's not tools. How about dreams? Right? No, not even dreams. Cats and dogs even have dreams. If you have a cat or a dog and you watch it asleep and you watch it having a dream, you can see their legs kick and you can see their body move because they're chasing something in the dream, similar to us. Usually either chasing something, or at least in most of my dreams, things are chasing me, usually angry students. So it's not dreams, it's not language, it's not tools. What is it? Yes, we are capable of complex thought higher than other animals. We are capable of complex humor. We can build more machinery. We can build bigger things. We're also one of the most aggressive species in the world. But that's not what makes us human. What makes us human is an existential creation within us, a need to not only communicate, but to communicate socially. We are storytellers. We love to tell stories. Ever since your great-great-grandfathers were living in caves drawing drawings, until today, we've been storytellers. What does that mean? It means a lot to us. Because the one thing that everybody is, in every single room in the world, the one thing we all are and we all share is we're actors. Now, that's going to come as a shock a little bit as a statement, because we have this perception that acting is fake. That acting is something you see on stage or on TV, and it's something that's pretend. It's not true. Acting is what you do on an everyday basis. The difference is whether you're trained and you're good at it, or you're not. How do we act? We choose our lines, we choose our words, we choose our vocabulary, we choose what outfits we wear, how we look, how we behave, our body language, how we sit. All of this are conscious choices that we make on a minute-to-minute basis. We're choosing to act in certain ways. We're choosing to perform. What we choose to perform and how we choose to perform it is very interesting. So I'm going to do a little experiment. Could you all close your eyes for me, please? It's okay. President, you can trust me. You can always fire me. Everyone close their eyes? Okay. There are no pink elephants in the room. There is no such thing as a pink elephant. You don't see a pink elephant in front of you. All right, raise hands, everybody who saw a pink elephant. Yeah, the whole room. We can hire him as faculty if you like for the next semester. The pink elephant experiment is my most interesting one, and I love doing this with all my students. It teaches you exactly the first step of communication, which is internal thought. What you think is what we see. Our brain is visual. And that I'm going to explain to you. We can go back to Zena, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what happened with that little 4-year-old. So, as I just told you, the pink elephant little story. Now imagine Zena. When a rescue worker found her in the house after the bombing, and came up and asked the 4.5-year-old, what happened? What do you think happened with her? She saw everything all over again. She saw the pink elephant. She saw everything that traumatized her all over again. Every time somebody asked her, the pain got worse. She learned that to be asked a question causes pain, so she avoids questions. She learned that speaking is going to cause her more trauma and more pain. So her brain, as a defense mechanism, muted her until she could deal with it. On day 16, Zena tugged my pants leg, and she said she wanted to speak. She wanted to get up on stage and act. And I couldn't stop smiling. And 4-year-olds are adorable and they're so sweet. And you feed them and they become, well, you. Deal with that later on. Your parents are still struggling with that. She got on stage and she was a news presenter. She improvised the news reading and she read the news about what happened to her. She told the story of her family, how they were bombed in the middle of the night, how everything fell, the loud noises, the cries, the screams, and how she couldn't see anything and she fainted and she woke up the next day in Beirut in Hamra with rescue workers. And she has no idea where her family is. The 4-year-old was able to do this because it was indirect communication, because she was a storyteller. She was telling a show. To the extent, I'll tell you, even in our culture, and our culture is the most interesting when it comes to this, puppets and storytelling are the same thing. They were created not for children, but for adults. Only married adults were allowed to go to the puppet show and to the storyteller. If you go to Damascus, in some coffee shops, they still have that tradition. He comes late at night for married people. Why? Because we're willing to communicate with a puppet more than we're willing to communicate with each other. And we're willing to be more honest when we distance ourselves from the conversation. That's why if you watch today's version, which is adult-themed cartoons, so things like Simpsons, Sausage Party, Big Mouth, all these kind of things, if that script was given to a normal actor, if a normal person was to say any of these lines these characters say, it would be banned immediately. No one would accept it coming from a human being. But when a puppet sits next to you and calls you names, you're good with that. We're okay, because we distanced. We allowed for communication. That's what we're looking for. So what our internal thoughts are, what makes us who we are. Is it heredity? Is it genetics? Were you born to be like this? Show of hands, people who think they're born to be the way they are. Nobody? Nobody believes their genetics had anything to do with their decisions today? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, not exactly right. You're 50% right. So nurture is everything you are experiencing since day one till today. Every memory, every speech, every conversation, every event, every painting, every film you looked at, script, poem, music you listened to, that made you you. Actually, I always love this experiment. I usually give a quiz to my students and I go, say who you are. Define who you are. That's the quiz question. When they start writing, they realize how devastatingly difficult it is to define who you are. Because you're not your job. You're not where you're born. You're not your name. These are things you do. These are attributes. So, what is it that we need to do? We need to focus on our thoughts. Because everything we learned, everything we contained, is now contained within us. This is the pink elephant. The positive affirmation, positive thought is what's going to make a big difference. It's what's going to change things. How much of communication is verbal? 50%? Raise the hands. 50% of communication is verbal? 2 people? All right. 25% of communication is verbal. You wish. It's actually 7% of communication is verbal. Everything you ever learned, said, read, all of it is just 7%. 93% remain. 38% is body language, is tone of voice. How you say what you say matters 10 times more than what is it you said. So the way you deliver, the way you speak, the way you use your voice, the tone, this is the bigger part. And the last part, 55%, happens before you even open your mouth. It's your body language. For people like us who are trained, we look for signs. I look, for instance, in a room when I have students or I have an audience, I look to see if there's any defensive body language. That means crossed legs, locked arms, face turned, diverting attention. not interested. In a room like this, when I'm speaking, I listen to one thing as a trained speaker: if you move. If anyone moves in their chairs or collects stuff or makes noise, I realize that I need to pay attention to you. So we've discussed what it is and how we are and what we're going to be. How do you be better at it? So this is what you are, a collection of thoughts, and hopefully positive ones now that you know this. Now the next step, the other 50%, and that's the other half of us, which is how we communicate. That's the part we can learn the best, because no matter how good your ideas are, unless you actually express them socially and communicate with somebody else, we will never know. You might be a genius, you might be somebody who could save the world, but if you don't know how to communicate, and it's not, again, it's not language, it's not the words I use. Remember, that's only 7%. How I communicate, my body language. As an example, if you're trying to flirt with someone and you come up to them and you're feeling a little bit lacking in confidence, like most of us do when you come up to flirt with somebody, and you come up and you've got excellent flirt lines and you've got excellent pickup lines and you have it memorized from all your favorite movies, and you come up and you speak to them. 7% of you is doing the right thing. It's saying the right lines. But if you weren't confident, then 93% of you is saying the opposite. That's why it doesn't work. Because the person listening to you is not convinced. Because you're not saying that. So, what do? Don't pink elephant your families. Tell them positively what to do, not negatively what not to do. The other thing you want to do to be better at being human, become what you are, actors. Learn how to use the tools. Learn how to use your body. Learn how to use your voice. Learn how to use your presence. Learn body language, acting classes, movement training. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but actually, learning how to act will stop you from being fake and make you actually more real. Thank you.